Welcome to the One Big Thing podcast, where inspiration meets transformation.
It's the real of my life is that I need to not lean on my own understanding and trust that God will open up the doors that he says that he's going to open up. Because when I lean on my own understanding, I go through doors that I'm not supposed to go to. I try to help God when I'm not supposed to try to help him. And so I think in my life, I've tried to help God when he doesn't need my help. And oftentimes I just need to sit back and just watch what he's going to do and trust that he's going to do what he says he's going to do. And so that is my big takeaway, is just to lean not on my own understanding and in all ways acknowledge him, and he will make my path straight. And that's not the easiest thing to do in life, especially when you see things that are going awry and don't quite understand. That's when you have to really put it in God's hands. And that's what I try to do.
Welcome into the One Big Thing podcast. Steve Campbell. Very, very, very excited for this one today with Nakia Burrise. She was referred by my good friend Kat Sutherland, who was referred by my good friend Laura Osnes. And one of my goals when I started this show was it would be very cool at some point to actually get a chance to meet some of the guests that I've had on. You know, through COVID, we all learned how to use technology and record virtually. But I had the honor of actually attending my very first Comic-Con with my sons and a few friends, and got to meet a couple of Power Rangers that were there and see their fans interact with them. And Nakia, which we'll get into today, will share part of her story, but absolutely as lovely in person as she is on the screen. If you're watching today on the YouTube channel, very excited to have this conversation, and it means a lot to me because I got to spend a little bit of time with her in real life as a human being. So, Nakia, welcome into the One Big Thing podcast. Very fortunate that Kat referred you. For those that don't know you, I know you have quite the following, but what's a few things for somebody who's never interacted with you that you want them to know right at the beginning?
Well, first, thank you for having me on the show. It was such a pleasure meeting you and your family. Your boys are lovely, your friends as well. The first thing people should know is that I am a follower of the Lord Jesus Christ. That is number one, and he is my first. Second, I am a wife. I am a mother, and I'm an actress, producer, writer, and all of those things after that. But God first, family second, career third. That's my order.
And I love that because it's helpful here at the beginning. And obviously, you know, when I get done with a guest, I ask, you know, who in your world do you know that I should interview? And as you record longer and longer, the list gets wilder and wilder of people that you never would have thought you would have ever had the opportunity to interview. And so I love the fact that you put the Lord first. As I had mentioned, you know, I have people from all walks of life that come onto the show, but when faith is near and dear as a part of your heart, I want to make sure that we take the time to explore it. And so I think most people that know you from your time on the Power Rangers, serving as the Yellow Ranger, which we can see behind you. If you're watching the video podcast, if you will, some of the, cartoons and artwork that you have, which is what you're known for, which gives people access to you because they view you as somebody that's been a part of their life, their childhood, their culture, but you are so much more. And so I wanted to kind of get into today with this show being the one big thing. If I had to ask you, Nakia Burrise, your one big thing, what would you want to share with the listening audience today?
You know, I had to think about that for a moment, and what I have learned, and it's the real of my life, is that I need to not lean on my own understanding and trust that God will open up the doors that he says that he's going to open up. Because when I lean on my own understanding, I go through doors that I'm not supposed to go to. I try to help God when I'm not supposed to try to help him. I kind of do like what Abraham did in the Bible when he was like, when God told him that he was going to have a son, and he was like, well, let me help you. Here is Hagar, Sarah's servant. Let's have a child with her. And God was like, no. You're going to have a child with your wife. And so I think in my life, I've tried to help God when he doesn't need my help. And oftentimes I just need to sit back and just watch what he's going to do and trust that he's going to do what he says he's going to do. And so that is my big takeaway, is just to lean not on my own understanding and in all ways acknowledge him, and he will make my path straight. And that's not the easiest thing to do in life, especially when you see things that are going awry and don't quite understand. that's when you have to really put it in God's hands.
Well,
And
and I
that's what
think
I
it's
try to do.
yeah, I think it's a refreshing take because I've had the opportunity to interview some different people in media and in Hollywood. And, it seems like in that space, you don't ever hear actors, actresses openly speaking about their faith in the Lord. And so it's been refreshing with yourself, with Kat, with Laura. When I got a chance to interact with you at Comic Con, I also got to kind of stand back and watch that you have truly fans that are coming out to see you and they want you to sign their poster or their action figure or whatever, because to you are this character to them in life, but you are so much more, is what I got into with Kat, which is you are a mother, you're a producer, but you're a follower of the Lord. And those opportunities at Comic-Con give you a chance to reach out to the everyday fan, but become so much more. And whether faith is a part of your life or not, we've all been at a new friend's house and tried to find the bathroom on our own, only to open a linen closet and feel foolish that we opened the wrong door that we shouldn't have gone into. You don't stay in the linen closet and you don't go to the bathroom there. But in our human experience, when we try to open doors we were never meant to open, we stay far too long. And I don't know if in part of your journey, is there any kind of methodology or decision making that when you know you're going down a path that maybe God didn't open, but you're trying to force open, have you learned over the years how to get out of that situation quicker? And what are some signs to you that this may not be the Lord and this is you trying to force something?
So I really refer to the Bible, and they used to ask for signs from God. Gideon asked for signs from God. Abraham asked for signs from God. And so that's what I do. I'm just like, Lord, if this is the door that you would have me to walk in, please let this and this happen. Or if this is not where I'm supposed to go, please let this and this happen. And oftentimes he will let this and this happen so that I know that that is his direction for me or not. And sometimes he's silent. So then I'm like, oh, I'm confused. I don't know if I'm supposed to sit here, and I'll continue to walk. And then I realize that that is not where I was supposed to go. And then I have to just kind of think about what he's shown me in the past, because sometimes he's already answered that. We ask the same question over and over and over again, expecting a different result when he's already answered it a year ago. And he's like, I'm not going to tell you the same thing again, Nakia. I've already told you no. Well, Lord, can you? It's just like a little kid where it's like, Mom, can I have this? Can I have this bag of Cheetos? And you're like, no. And then they ask a different way. The answer is still no. And that's been the story of my life, pretty much.
And for you, like, what does that look like? Because with you being in entertainment, is this in line of like roles that you're offered, movies that you want to make? Is this just relational decisions? What does this look like for you when you are wanting to trust the Lord and lean on your own understanding, but you're in the entertainment space? What has that looked like over the years, and kind of where have you learned lessons, as being an entertainer?
I remember one time I had prayed about um, getting a manager. And I specifically asked God, um, okay, Lord, am I supposed to go forward with this? If so, don't if so, my agreement with him, I remember it was a percentage or something that I was like, okay, let him not ask for this percentage and not want this. And okay, so I went into this meeting with the manager, and what I asked specifically from the Lord, this manager ended up asking for. It was a no. I'm trying to remember what the percentage was. I think it was, I don't know, 15% or something of my commercials. I was like, no, he needs to just ask for 10. If he asks over that, Lord, let that be an indication that that's not where I'm supposed to go. He asked over that. And so I wasn't supposed to go. And I didn't listen. I didn't listen to the Lord. And within less than a year, God showed me signs on why, after praying that prayer, I should have not tried to, when you try to adjust it and like, okay, well, maybe that wasn't quite what I prayed. Was that specifically what I prayed? And God was like, no, that's what you prayed. I showed you and you went with him. And now this is what happens. And we ended up parting ways within less than 6 months. And I'm grateful for that, because I don't know where that would have led me, in not following directions with the Lord. So when it comes to the industry and roles, I don't audition for. I've already told my agent things that I will not audition for. And I remember I had gotten an audition for a role that I would not play. And I declined. And then the manager that I had at the time called me and asked me, and I said, I declined. I told you these are not the kind of roles that I want to go for. And then my acting coach called, all for this particular role. And I was like, why is this being pushed so much? And I had to tell them all, each of them, 3 different times, no. And I'm like, why do you keep asking me when you know how I feel about that? It's a no. It's a no. I'm not going to compromise, period. So I haven't found that in Hollywood. I have chosen not to compromise what I believe. It doesn't matter the amount of money. Um, because at the end of the day, I am going to have to stand before God and give accounting for what I've done on this earth. And there's specific roles. I have 2 boys. I'm not going to play nudity. I'm not going to do things that are going to make my husband feel uncomfortable. And kudos to those that choose to do that. That's fine, but that's not something that I want to do. And luckily, I've had an agency that I've been with for several years that seems to understand that. And when I've declined roles, they've, sometimes they'll push back, but then they don't say, Nakia, I'm going to drop you because you've decided that you're not going to, be butt naked on film or whatever. So yeah, that's kind of been my journey when it comes to being a Christian in Hollywood. I'm just not going to compromise.
So because many of us don't get presented those kind of opportunities, what does that back and forth look like if you're being asked to do something that goes against your core values? Do they sweeten the pot by offering more money? Is it just pure pressure? What does that look like for you as an actress when somebody wants you to do something? Is there incentives for you, which is maybe where then some people go, shoot, okay, I'll do it, right? So what is that back and forth with an agent? What is it, money driven, or is it just pressure?
Well, I think for any agency, they're in it to make money, obviously. Um, but it's often money. Okay, well, you can get this or you can get that. I'm not Angelina Jolie or Brad Pitt, so I'm not getting offered $1 million contracts or anything like that. But it's seen as an opportunity to progress your career in a positive way. It could be, from a guest star role to a series regular role and this particular role was a series regular role, which could pay you a nice sum, a very, very nice sum. But it wasn't worth it to me. It just didn't sit right in my spirit. And I just felt like God was like, no. And He has so much better for me in the long run, even if I can't see it. And that's where you have to lean not on your own understanding. Um, and I've just had to do that, even in broke stages, being completely broke, declaring bankruptcy right after Power Rangers. I still had to withdraw myself from accepting particular roles just for money. I just stood on the faith that God was going to provide in some kind of way, even if I had to go out and get a job, which I ended up doing anyway. Um, yeah, that's been my life, Mr. Steve.
Well, and the one thing I appreciate that you said subtly, but I caught on to it, is if that's for you, the nude role, whatever, you do what you have to do. And I think that's a powerful statement because it's a reflection that you know who you are and what you stand for, but you're not limiting other people that are chasing a career. And so I wonder just how many people have those own moral convictions as to what they stand for so that when push comes to shove, right, they know this is not for me. Maybe it's for somebody else. But also what you just shared too, I think this kind of came out a little bit in Kat's episode. Um, I don't think we always fully understand what the entertainment world is like. And when you've made a show like the Power Rangers, you think somebody as an observer is set for life, but you just talked about obviously some financial hardships coming out of the show. What would you say is the most misunderstood component that the average person doesn't really understand about the entertainment world?
Very good question. Most people see that you're on television and just assume that you're automatically rich. You are not automatically rich. And just because you're on a television show does not guarantee that when this show ends that you're going to have another show to go to. So Power Rangers was my first series. I was a junior in college when I booked the role. I continued to attend school while filming Power Rangers, which was nothing but God that got me through that because we were filming 12 to 16-hour days. I was a full-time student. I did end up graduating. I graduated in 4 years in an extra quarter while filming Power Rangers. But Power Rangers was non-union. And my first episode, well, my first season of Power Rangers, I was getting $750 an episode before taxes. So in California, I remember looking at my first check and literally my eyes welled up with tears because I was like, what is this? I made more at UCLA catering. Um, but I was working. I was doing something that I loved and had only dreamt about. I was on a television show, a series regular on a television show, and I would never take that away. But when I left Power Rangers, I had saved a little bit of money while I was on the show. And when it ended, I didn't have a television show to just go right into. I didn't have another series regular job or a guest star and recurring job. I would get, periodic jobs here, co-star here, guest star there, but it was nothing consistent. And so I didn't have anything to supplement my income or keep me afloat. And that's what a lot of actors and actresses fall into. And it's not often talked about, but it's true. That's why you see actors working at a grocery store or security guards. And that's not something to be made fun of. It's very humbling for actors when you see them on television and then you see them as a security guard or your bartender. It's a very humbling thing. When I got off of Power Rangers, I remember when I was on the show and at UCLA, my mom said to me, Kia, make sure that you get your degree, finish your college education, somehow figure it out so that you walk away with a degree. And that was one of the best things I could have done because after I left Power Rangers, I ended up substitute teaching. And that allowed me to make a decent income and also continue to audition because I can take a job here or take a job there, depending on, when I would book an acting job. And when I first started substituting, the first couple of years were not, I wasn't getting steady work. Um, and so I ended up changing to a different district so that I could get more work. And the district that it was Los Angeles Unified School District, but the area I changed to was in a rougher neighborhood. And that's where I could get consistent work. And so I start really falling in love with a lot of those kids. There was challenging times. I will not say that they weren't, but I start falling in love with my students and really trying to gain an understanding of what their life was. And what I realized was that a lot of them had never been outside of a 3 mile radius. They had never seen the beach and they live in Los Angeles. They had never seen Beverly Hills. They had never seen Hollywood. They had never seen a lot of things that we take for granted. And while I was teaching, I started a nonprofit called A Day in the Life. And this was to introduce children to career opportunities that were not accessible or they didn't know about in their environment. And we would, each week, they would explore a different career where they would live the life of a chef or live a life of a set owner, or, outside of just hearing about a lawyer, a doctor, the typical jobs that most kids hear about. I wanted to expose them to things that maybe they had never heard of. And so each week we would do that. And then at the end of the month, we would take a field trip. I would pay to take a field trip to one of these professions. And my husband and I own a set company. And so we had taken them, one of the field trips was to our set company where they had to build their own little model set. A lot of them didn't even know what a set designer was, didn't even hear this profession ever. And so we would go through different stages and different opportunities of knowing what a set designer was, what a painter was, what a carpenter was, so that they could know that there's life outside of their little bubble, their little 3 mile radius. There's other job opportunities outside being a firefighter or a doctor. And so all of this happened after Power Rangers and exposed me to the teaching field and really understanding what teachers were going through, because I had no idea until I actually stepped into the teaching field. There's a lot that goes on in teaching, not only for the students, but also for the teachers. And I just gained a huge respect for teachers, because often they're not just teaching, they're also kind of like mom figures, mentors,
Yep.
so many different levels. And even to this day, I actually have some of the students that I taught years ago messaging me on Instagram. um, but I'm going to go back to Power Rangers at the time. So imagine being on television and now you're inside of a classroom where kids recognize you. And it's very humbling and embarrassing. You had to take a swallow a pill of, let your pride go away when you're taking phones away from them and they're trying to record you and they're like, oh my gosh, my teacher is the yellow Power Ranger. And so I dealt with that. I taught for 15 years in between jobs. um yeah, yeah.
So that was going to
Long-winded
be
answer.
no, that was going to be my question is, as guest talk, I'm always listening. And I'm like, man, so you go from Power Rangers. And then I was wondering how long until your episodes aired that these students realized that the Yellow Ranger was also their teacher. So you just kind of addressed that for me. And part of my background, I thought I was going to go into education. I actually have a master's in social studies in the state of New York, 7 through 12. So I was
Wow.
certified. I went through school. I did my student teaching, and this was in kind of the mid 2000s. And I remember I had served in two different school districts. One was more of an inner city school, dealt with a lot of kids who were single family homes, were going through hard situations. And my second placement was in more of a rural community, a lot of farmers. And I just remember I felt so limited as in terms of what impact I could actually make. And they would tell me, Steve, you can't go into a room if a girl is in the room by herself. And I was like, why? Like, what do you mean? And it was because you don't want the optics of if something goes wrong, right? And it was like, that makes no sense to me. Like, I'm here to teach, I'm here to give back. And it was just very difficult for me, with the desire that was on my heart to impact people, to feel the restrictions that teachers can go through that many times they didn't ask. But I remember, some of the most humbling conversations came from 13, 14, and 15-year-olds that you were the confidant that they opened up to about how hard life was at home. And it's super hard to inspire somebody who already feels down and out at 13, 14, 15. And so that was a moment for me where I prayed, Lord, I thought this is what you had for me. Something isn't adding up. But now, years later, my wife and I, will be in the grocery store and I'll have people be like, Mr. Campbell. And I'm like, what? Is my dad here? What's going on? And they come up and they remember me. And I just don't think this is something that's come out on the show over the years. The impact authority figures, good or bad, can have on us can leave a lasting impression. And one of my pastors from my church came on and talked about trauma, sex trauma, abuse, rape. He said that so much of what we experience now in our 30s and 40s actually stems from things that happened to us when we were 5, 10 years old that we've never coped with. And so as a figure, and this is kind of what I experienced with you at Comic-Con, I left and drove away. And I always think and, introspect. And I thought about you and Kat being at that table for 2 days and just watching people that interact with you as if you're still the Yellow Ranger when you're so much more is a fascinating thing to experience, the realities that people can create in their mind. And even just as Kat and I talked about some of the collateral that we had released from the episode, and reading comments that people wrote. I remember you in episode blank when you did this, and remember when you saw Tommy, and you remember when you saw the Red Ray, and I'm just like, how long ago is that? But to them, you're everything. And so what you have described is you're so much more. And I think what would be helpful is when you were coming out of Power Rangers and into education, was faith a part of your life at that time in your life, or has faith been something that has kind of grown as you've gotten older? Hey everyone, Steve Campbell. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. If it's made an impact on you, I would love to take a moment to ask you to subscribe to this podcast so you never miss an episode. But I would also love for you to leave a 5-star rating and review. Your ratings and review help other listeners know that this show is worth their time. So thank you so much for tuning into The One Big Thing, and let's enjoy the rest of the episode.
I have known the Lord since I was little.
Okay.
I would be the only one inside of my household, actually, preaching to my parents. My parents knew God, but they weren't going to church. I would go to church with my Nana. Um, and I remember coming home, this little, and be like, Mom and Dad, stop smoking. Mom and Dad, stop listening to that. I know I got on their absolute nerve. But now it's funny because God has used me in many ways for my family. My parents are avid churchgoers. They actually serve the homeless um, every month. It's their, it's actually their program that they developed for the homeless, which it's just amazing. But no, I've always known the Lord, but I've grown in my relationship with the Lord with like understanding what the Bible says. I didn't really get into the Bible until my 20s, really trying to take lessons and studying under pastors to truly understand. Because before, to me, I remember just I would have the King James version, and I was like, "What am I reading?" I just did not. I didn't understand what any of it was saying, and so I had to get the New International Version so that I could understand what God was saying. And then, under the leadership of different pastors and so forth, really honing in and truly understanding what God was saying to me as a person and to his children. But yes, I've known the Lord since I was little. Um, and I believe he's used me since I was little as well.
Yeah, in the range of people's experiences, good and bad, I've had people that have grown up in faith like I did, and walked away from faith for a period of their life and came back. I've had people that have discovered a faith of following the Lord later on in life, going through hardship, and so there is no one size fits all. And I think what I'm always amazed at is, having the honor and privilege of interviewing so many different people from different genres and fields. And I think as a bystander consumer of social media, it's very easy to look at what all of you do. And if you're in a challenging or difficult season, assume that everyone is doing better than you. And it was funny. I just literally shared a picture with my wife the other day because when this episode airs, we are literally right in the summer of 2025, which means that my four kids of 10 and younger are all home during the day with my wife, and she is a saint. I married up. And just the amount of stuff we find around our house, and you think it's just you as a parent, where it's like nothing is put away. Our kids go from it being in the living room making a mess to running out of the house, and you feel like a failure as a parent because it's like, how many times do I have to tell them to pick up after themselves? And just the things you find, and you begin to doubt your parenting skills and why are our kids so wild or whatever it is. And there was a picture floating around the internet yesterday with like 15,000 likes from parents of a living room with all of the cushions turned upside down, cheese stick wrappers, like a tablet on the ground, a Capri Sun wrapper out. And it was just like, why? In the comments brought healing to my soul because I realized that I'm not alone and Steph is not alone in how we're raising our kids. But when you are in a challenging season of raising kids financially, praying for an open door, whatever it is, and you turn on your phone and it looks like, oh, you guys are at another Comic-Con signing stuff. Your life is great. You must make so much money and you're larger than life. And then you have people come on that are like, I have insecurities. I have doubt. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm stuck. I'm trusting. Nothing makes sense. It's like, oh, wait, what? You're just like me? And so when we say to trust in the Lord no matter what, you've talked a little bit here about, kind of the career through Power Rangers. You talked about roles and things that you won't do. How else has this kind of showed up in your life? Trusting the Lord when it doesn't make sense. I don't know if you want to get into it. I know one of the things you and I talked about when we got a chance to connect was a film that you were working on in a situation. I don't know if you want to share that story, if that's helpful, or you could take that question of how else trusting the Lord has kind of manifested in your life.
So, what I was sharing with Steve over the past weekend was I took the bull by the horns and decide to fund, produce, and write and star in my first feature film called Back to Bridgewood. It's an inspirational comedy, and it was just released on multiple platforms March this year. And when I was deciding on a director, I had tons of people submit, and it came down to two people. And one was a friend of mine that I only had met only a few months ago through another friend of mine. And the other was a gentleman that came through my network. I looked at all of his credentials, and he looked like a very experienced director. My friend, this would be her directorial debut. And so I wanted someone that had a little bit more experience. And so even though when she just out of the blue said, let me direct, I remember sitting there, we were having lunch, and I felt this peace come over me, which was so strange because I was like, she's never directed anything. She's been in the industry for a period of time, for a long period of time, but she's never directed anything. But I felt this peace come over me, but I ignored it. And I was like, no, I've got to go through this. I've got to go through the stage. I've got to really look at what he offers, look at what she offers. And then my writing partner at the time, who co-wrote this with me, we had to make the decision together. And so we chose to go with this first director. And within 2 days, I saw that I had made the wrong decision. I believe that the website that I looked at, his credentials were all falsified because when he showed up on set, the camera was little, the monitor was short circuiting. God literally told me to look at the footage, and I was, oh my gosh, I was like, what is this? And this is all money that I'm just dishing out, and locations that I've already paid for, and I can't get money back. And now I'm stuck with this director, and I'm like, Lord, what am I going to do? So here comes day 4. I go back to my friend Kelsey. She lives in Tennessee. I'm in California. And I'm like, I'm just going to reach out and see if she's interested. I'm on set, by the way, filming. We're supposed to be filming. And my cast can tell that I'm completely irate. He knew that I was irate because I felt just kind of like stuck in the middle here, not knowing what to do. I called her and I didn't even tell her why. She was in church. And I was like, Kelsey, can you just, she was like, I'll call you. I'll call you as soon as church is over. And I was like, okay. So when she called me, I was like, how are you? She's like, I'm good. I said, would you be interested in still directing my film? And she was like, absolutely. And I was like, oh my gosh, thank you. So literally that day, Sunday, this was a Sunday, I got her a flight from Tennessee into California. Her and her husband were both, I had already offered them roles. So they were both supposed to come here anyway to be a part of it. So as soon as she lands, the airport closes down in Tennessee. It was like the God's perfect timing. There was an ice storm out of the blue that comes, which if she wouldn't have left when she left, she would not have made it here. I would have lost more time, more money. She came in, completely showed out. My set was like, it felt professional. My cast was happy. I was happy. She did such an amazing job. And I just gave it all to God. If I would have really listened to that peace that came and trusted when she said, let me direct, I literally remember sitting there going, oh. But then I went back to the Nakia mind, who wants to question things and say, okay, maybe that wasn't God telling me this, because this guy seems so much more professional and knows his directing and lighting and all of that from what he showed me. And it was just all false. So I should have trusted what God said from the beginning, but he put all the pieces together in the end anyways. And I am so happy with how my film came out. If I would have let him finish my film, I do not believe I would have had a film. I would have lost a lot of money in it.
Well, I think that's such an amazing story, and as you were telling it to me over the weekend, I was just mortified for you for the fact of you go out and you spend money and you hire to get catfished in a way professionally. And
Yes.
part of what you had spoke about is there's when you trust the Lord, there's a peace that surpasses understanding, and I think it's the understanding part that we typically will flub up on, where there's a peace that enters my scenario, but the understanding part doesn't match what I thought it was going to be. In whether you are talking about filming, producing, maybe you're praying about a church that you should go to, or a career you should take, or a relocation, or buying a home, whatever you plug in, whatever the thing is. I think sometimes when there is a peace, that comes, but the optics don't match up. The home that should be fixed up and isn't quite done, and you thought you were going to buy a new home, the small country church that needs help versus the big, set up church. Not that any of these things are wrong or evil or sinful, but it's, I think, when we don't listen to the peace and the silence of, it's interesting, right? Because they've never directed a film. We can negate things that God wants to do. And so I think it's always fascinating to think back on my life. And this is why I'm a huge proponent of journaling, because it allows me to go back and read truthfully my own misdoings and things I've done and times I wish I had trusted the Lord more. So is there anything for you from a practical standpoint that allows you to stay kind of in a space of trusting the Lord? Is there anything that you do on a daily or a weekly that helps you stay there?
You, first of all, you have such a calming voice, Steve. I just love that. It's just so calming. Oh my gosh. But you hit the nail on the head when you were talking about the peace and the understanding. It's so true. It's, you get this peace from God, but then you don't understand where that peace is coming from. So then you start questioning, okay, was it from God? Was that truly from God? No, 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 that doesn't make sense in my mind. So I have to go this way because that just doesn't line up. But that's so true what you just said. And I just thank you for that. Journaling, I, at one point in my, well, a long period of in my life, I journaled a lot. I have so many journals that I go back to and refer to because that's what God says. Write it down. He told the Israelites to write it down so that they could remember for generations to come what he did for them. And so that's what I would do whenever I felt like I questioned things and was like, well, I don't know if God showed up. I go back to my journal and say, oh my gosh, look at all of these things that the Lord did. Um, so that was something that I need to actually get back to. But every day I wake up and I'm in a study right now in Second Samuel, and I feel like God brings certain things within my study to help me see where He is in my life currently. There's a way that He does that nobody else can, and even if you've read the same Bible verse 50,000 times, he'll find a way to make it relate to your current situation. And so that's basically how my life has been going recently, where I talk to him every morning, ask for direction. Sometimes I hear him, sometimes I don't, and when I don't, I just go along the route and hope that he will just guide me and steer me the right way. But I think journaling is very important in remembering the things that God has done for you so that you can appreciate and be grateful in those very scary times when things become, tumultuous or just incomprehensible, and you just want to forget, or you just can't remember how God has showed up in the past. When you have it written down, you're able to go back and see what he's done in your life and to remember. And that's where faith and trust can take a stand again, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, and from this is how the Holy Spirit works in my life. So my GPS system, we talked about the peace and the understanding. When I have this overwhelming peace, but the optics in front of me don't make sense, God doesn't continue to speak. He stays silent because he's already given me peace. It's when I go to do the thing that's harmful that he won't stop telling me to stop. So that's how I know it's him.
Mm.
So when I'm, Lord, help me to be in better health as a dad, and I go for the unhealthy food, I feel a conviction to stop, but I don't listen. And then I'm like, Lord, where were you? When I go to do something that's going to be harmful, the Lord will whisper, you don't need it. When I pray for peace and he gives it to me, he doesn't talk until the next step is revealed. And I think where I get lost is when he's already given me peace. I don't understand what's happening. So I begin to pursue other things because I want to hear. And when I pursue the other things, I hear him saying, stop, stop, stop. But I continue to press on because I want to recreate that peace that I felt and I never feel it. And then I wonder, God, where are you? And so I wonder how many Christians misdiagnose that if God has already given you peace about something in your life, go back to that. Stop pursuing things that, as a good parent, you let your kids fall, and you let your kids sounds terrible. You let your kids make mistakes. You let them grow because they learn lessons. But if harm is about to happen to them, I step in immediately. And
Mm,
so I think if we're all being honest, faith is a very hard thing to explain because we don't get to see day in and day out our faith in the real sense of the physical realm that we live in. But what I have experienced in my life is when I'm about to do something that I'm not supposed to do, the Lord will gently remind me to stop. But when I've prayed about something and I've gotten peace about it, many times he doesn't continue to speak because he's already given me peace. So it's if you feel like you're in a hard season right now and things aren't making sense, go back to your last place of peace and think about what have I been doing since that point that might be skewing what I think is God when it's really me, and blaming him for things that he isn't doing that I'm doing to myself that are harmful. And be careful that you're not listening to voices that mean well for you. That, Nakia, pursue that nudity role. I mean, you need it, right? You need that for your career. Pursue that thing. Pursue that career over there. Work extra hours. Make more money for your family. If you feel like God has given you peace about something that doesn't make sense, it surpasses understanding. It's probably exactly where you need to go back to. And so it is a very hard lesson for us to learn. And journaling has helped me realize, well, March of 2023, I fell on my face. December of 2022, I fell on my face. And it's just like, so I always try to think about the listener. And when you hear somebody say, trust the Lord with all your heart and lean out on your own understanding, like, what does that mean? It's a cool coffee mug slogan, but it's what
mhm.
you just said. When the person, the director who's never directed, but you have this piece, explore that. Don't explore the flashy thing that's trying to get you to look over here because it's a distraction. So if we can remove distractions, then we could be exactly where God has wanted us to be as moms, as dad, as parents. So that's the whole point of this show, is to not give you the just be better message that I think Instagram is trying to tell you right now. Wake up earlier, take cold showers, eat clean food, go to bed early, don't touch alcohol, don't give your kids food dyes, don't do these. And you're just like, how do I be a human being? And it's go back to the simple things. So, Nakia, in the last few minutes that we have together, anything that you'd want to get out before we bring this episode to a close? Did we nail it? Is there any conversation we left unhad?
I just felt like God just spoke to me through you. So I appreciate that. I'm listening intently, um, because I haven't always trusted that peace. Um, and that just was so clear to me just now. So I thank you, Lord, for speaking through Steve to me. And I hope that others will adhere to that as well. That trust that peace that God gives you, even when it doesn't, it's unexplainable. Like you don't understand, trust it. And our mind, our flesh will convince us otherwise. Our flesh will convince us, well, yeah, that's a peace, but that doesn't make sense, right, Nakia? So go do just exactly what you were just saying. So yes, no, that all came together for me just in that little part right there. But no, I think we've pretty much explored, and let me just say that I respect anyone in this industry. It's not the easiest thing to navigate. People compromise when they don't want to compromise because they want their career to grow. And I respect everybody. That's your relationship with the Lord, your relationship with yourself, your relationship with your family is going to dictate what you decide to do. And I am not I just didn't want to come across like I'm holier than thou or anything like that, because that's not what I'm saying at all. I'm just saying for me in my life, I these are the choices that I've chose to do because I want to feel good about what I present to the world and what I'm a part of. Um, but no, I guess I don't have anything else to add outside of what I just learned
You did great.
myself.
And let me give you the two last things. I'm figuring it out too. I am not good at this. I know where I make mistakes. So I'm teaching you what I'm learning in real time about my own failings and shortcomings. So take what it is. But also too, I think what you did is explain that when you understand your own values and your own character, it's not to say you're better than somebody else. But if you want to honor your marriage in a certain way, do it. If you want to raise your kids a certain way that's countercultural to the way your family did, do it. As long
Yeah.
as it's in line with there's a purpose behind it and what you're trying to do. And don't be dismayed, or don't push people away too that may be different than you. um, Try to seek understanding, but also just be very careful that we're not setting up boundaries everywhere just because people are different. And so I think when you have core convictions, it allows you to operate on, am I raising my family the right way? Am I honoring my spouse the right way? Am I honoring my career? And if you're doing all those things, stay true to what you're doing. And so as we all seek the peace that passes understanding, if you find it on the one big thing, please drop a comment and let us know, because I think Nakia and I are also searching for it. But Nakia Burrise, I appreciate you being my friend on the show and having a conversation. And again, I just enjoyed getting to meet you in real life and the impact that you have. And don't stop being who you are. So if anybody wants to get in touch or follow her through her Comic-Con journey, we will make sure we have some information in the show notes so you can get in touch with her, follow on Instagram, check out her movie that came out, and just appreciate your time being on the One Big Thing podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I truly enjoyed my time.
Got it.